Thank you very much, organizer IVSA, International Veterinary Students Association Rampur, for allowing me to present on the topic Transboundary Animal Diseases for day one with graduates. And also I would like to thank you organizers for introducing me. Very nice introduction. When you are talking about the ECTAD, maybe you can pronounce it as ECTAD. We normally call it ECTAD, an Emergency Center for Transboundary Animal Disease. Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We are hearing you.
Okay, my presentation goes this way. I have some talking points so that you will understand few things in this presentation. As you know, transboundary animal disease is also one of the emergencies. So let's have some emergencies. What are the emergencies? Then you will understand. If you narrow down your thinking to animal health sector, then it is animal health emergencies, which is basically based on prevent, detect, and response principle. Disease cannot be controlled without cross-border coordination, without value chain studies. So you will hear something about cross-border coordination and value chain study. And then these transboundary animal diseases are very similar. Some of the disease like these days, terminology is used as FAST, foot and mouth disease, and similar transboundary animal disease. Some country use of foreign animal diseases and some exotic diseases. Apart from that, you might have heard about the GFTADs, and then you might be knowing about the PCP. Lastly, but the very important is from today's talk, you have a little bit about the take-home masses. So I proceed to next slide. Emergency types, you might have seen one of the emergencies transboundary animal diseases, but there are other emergencies apart from our domain, like conflict, drought, earthquake, floods, landslide, nuclear, storm, tsunami, and even the plant pest and other diseases. So to control and contain these type of emergencies, there is some principle, like starting from protecting yourself until physically removing the hazard and whatever the emergency has caused. So these are some of the control strategies, like elimination, replace the hazard, isolate people from the hazard places, change the way of people working. So these are some of the emergency principle in general. But since we all are going to be veterinarian in near future or in a 1 or 2 years, so you need to understand what are the emergencies for the animal health sector. First of all, this is the guiding principle for you all. So don't forget this. This is the guide to prepare your health emergencies, means it applies with disease to disease. For example, you apply, one of the principle is prevent. The major component under prevent is the biosafety and biosecurity, immunization or the vaccination, and the value chain knowledge. So this is very much the very much important portion of the health emergency. The another health emergency is detect. So under detect, the major component is whether the country has very good laboratory system, country has a surveillance system in place, or country has some epidemiologist who will assist in planning and disease control in the country. Once you have prevent, detect, then you respond. For example, how do you respond to outbreak investigations? So do you have stockpiles? For example, like there is a COVID-19 outbreak in Nepal. There is an outbreak, how the human health emergencies have responded to COVID-19, whether they have a sufficient stockpile, whether they have a warehouse, whether they have a oxygen cylinders. These are some of the examples. Do you have a PP in advance when you don't have a disease? Also, every country should have these emergency operations centers. And these are some of the cross-cutting issues when you are dealing with the animal health emergencies. For example, multi-sectoral collaboration. Single sector cannot handle disease. And these days, for example, like if you have a zoonotic transboundary animal disease, it can be One Health approach. And do you have sufficient policies, strategies, etc. So how it goes, if you see on the right side of my screen, as I explained here, prevent it. You have some tools to prevent it, then detect it, respond it, recover it. So you keep on preparing any emergencies when there is no disease. We call it in a peacetime, not in a crisis time. When there is disease outbreak, you never know how to prevent it. So you have plan in hand how to prevent it. You have plan and you have a facility how to detect it. Then based on your prevention plan and detection, you respond quickly and the recovery comes better. So that is the cycle. Every day one competence graduate should learn about this principle. Next slide. I'll give you some of the transboundary example and then some of the concept of what are the transboundary animal disease. Don't focus only on the definition of the transboundary animal disease, but that is also important because you need to know what are the transboundary animal diseases. For example, epidemic disease, which has highly contagious and they are transmissible. Not only that, they spread so extremely rapidly within the country, outside the country. So transboundary animal disease don't respect the borders. You have we'll come to those slides in a couple of minutes. And also, when there is a transboundary animal disease outbreak, there is a consequences on socioeconomic status of the society because of the high rate of deaths as well as the disease in animals. And some of the disease, for example, like PPR, if there is a high disease outbreak in a community, and the livelihood of the poor farmers is almost gone. So if it is a transboundary animal disease, it quickly transmits to the human beings. And you can see recent outbreak of COVID-19, how rampant it is globally. That is a pandemic. So, but the basic principles are the transboundary animal disease at source is animals. So animal source, you always consider these are some of the important part. When you are staying, your neighboring country, you should know the knowledge of geography. Like, we in Nepal are adjoining to Indian border, which is open, porous, and then there is a lot of animal movement, which is called informal. People don't like to say illegal. And then to control such type of movement, such type of porous borders, you have weak legislation. And the consequences is outbreak of the transboundary animal disease. And then apart from the borders, you have these days globalization, land encroachment, and climate change. Many of you might have experienced some of the infectious disease. For example, like vector-borne disease. At one time, it was not in Karnali, and then because of this climate change and planet start heating up, and then these infectious disease and agent started going to other areas and slowly expanding their range. So this is very good example of how the disease are transmitted, how the transboundary animal disease are transmitted within neighboring countries or globally. So as I mentioned in the beginning, like some some people try to say like, transboundary animal disease because they don't have a border. So some people say it is an exotic disease. Some people say it's a foreign disease. Whatever the disease it is, it causes a disaster consequences once it enters to your territory. People never thought COVID would come out of the China, Wuhan, quickly move to globalization, quickly move to Italy, then it moved to the USA, and slowly it is moving around the world. Almost every country is suffering from the COVID-19. So it can disrupt, like, if it is in animals, so the principle is same. We should always consider the principle. Cats can disrupt or hinder domestic production system, your sales system, even international trade can be hampered because of the outbreaks. And we'll know that, but for example, I'll just give you one example. If you have a FMD in Nepal, you cannot trade with any international partners. So usually, and this try to prefer name transboundary animal disease if they are not veterinarians, and then try to spell it but if everybody knows it, it's a TAS. Sometime some of the in a recent past, people started incorporating emerging infectious disease within the transboundary diseases. If it is a human disease, they simply say transboundary disease. For the animal health sector, it is transboundary animal diseases. So EID is part of transboundary animal disease. I have seen like you have separate session on emerging and re-emerging session. So I'll not go on that chapter, but at least I'll just let you know what is emerging diseases. Like, when the disease changes in its dynamics, like, in a population, so it was not there, it came suddenly, or it moves from region to region, or it increases the incidences, whatever it is. There is some publications how the emerging diseases are named. So you can understand that emerging disease are, if it is coming first time. For example, you might have heard the name of the rinderpest. A rinderpest might come to country because the virus may be in some of the laboratories, for example. So then it can be re-emerging. So I'll not go beyond that in this slide. So I was just mentioning foot and mouth disease and similar transboundary animal disease. This terminology you might not have heard. If you have not heard, European Union is using this word. What happened, European Union is not having, they are free from the foot and mouth disease, but they are equally on threat of foot and mouth disease. If foot and mouth disease enters in Australia, America, and Europe, it's going to be devastating. So, and it is not easy to control, more than two diseases, going separately. So the control strategy might be foot and mouth as well as the similar transboundary disease can be controlled at one time. For example, like, if you are going to field vaccinating cattle, you can vaccinate foot and mouth disease. At the same time, you can vaccinate hemorrhagic septicemia. Some of the transboundary animal disease examples are like African swine fever, contagious bovine pleuropneumonia. These are some of the names, and even hemorrhagic septicemia is named. It's I just took out from the FAO website. Global avian influenza virus, AIV, and with zoonotic potential. So that means the viruses, avian influenza viruses, which have a zoonotic potential, they have an ability to transmit into the human beings. Apart from that, there is emerging viruses, H5N8. This H5N8 virus was not there earlier in Nepal. Just 2-3 years back, it is emerged in Nepal. And then there are other viruses which are not here, but in sub-Saharan Africa. And then S7N9 virus, which is still avian influenza viruses. It has limited to China. And then similarly, you have a foot and mouth disease, MERS coronavirus, Rift Valley fever, rinderpest, Newcastle virus, PPR. So these are some of the examples. There can be a lot of transboundary animal diseases. But recently, 2-3 years back in 2018, FAO and OIE did a survey which area people are focusing on that. For example, Africa, they are focusing on avian influenza, rabies, FMD, African swine fever. Asia, rabies, FMD, and avian influenza. If you see in 2008, remember, in 2018, there was no African swine fever in Asia. And the people started warning to the countries, it might come to Asia. Now, if the survey would have been in 2021, the African swine fever would be the priority for Asian countries, especially the people having a lot of pigs like China, Vietnam, like other countries. So Middle East and America, Europe. So among the Asian countries, and if you have heard about the name SARC, SARC contains, there are 8 countries. There is a separate forum, you know that SARC priorities, and under the SARC, there is a separate entity network of 8 director general of animal husbandry departments. In some of the country, they don't call it animal husbandry, they call it animal husbandry commissioner, for example, in Pakistan and India, but they have a network of the chief veterinary officers, and then that forum and the other laboratory and epidemiology forum, these are the 4 diseases they wanted to focus on that. So because in the left side, I showed a lot of diseases, but at the country on the right side, you are narrowed down your priorities because you don't have resources. When you don't have resources, so you need to prioritize it. So there are a lot of diseases, a lot of problems from the animal health sector. For example, FMD, PPR, AMR, zoonotic flu, other zoonotic flu, EIDs, other tests. So what is your priority? So that is very much important. So it all depends upon your country capacity and country resources. So overall, what we have to do is you should consider 2 themes. Number 1 is laboratory networking. The networking of laboratory all over the Nepal. For example, in COVID-19, now they have more than 90 laboratories. At least because of COVID, people started knowing what is networking, and everybody is sending their results to the NPHL, that is National Lab in Teku, Human Lab, and then Human Health Department. So that network is very much important in animal health sectors. How many laboratories you have within the country, outside the country. So, and then you started developing your capacity in the laboratory side. The another theme for any disease is epidemiology networking and the epidemiology capacity building in the country as well as in the region or whatever. For example, if you are in the university, you have a IVSA, it is overall Veterinary Students Association. But if you want to develop your networks on laboratory, if you want to develop your networks within university in epidemiology, some of the foreign universities, they have already started this type of networks. So to build up these 2 networks, you need to have a harmonization and quality control. You also need the coordination. You also need some strategy. Without any plan, policies on transboundary animal diseases, zoonotic diseases, you cannot go ahead. Which I also mentioned, like, you know, animal health emergencies is otherwise you can call it your strategy based on your principle, prevent, detect, response, and other cross-cutting issues. So finally, this One Health coordination mechanism should be developed at all levels to support the to contain the transboundary animal diseases. I can see I started when the participants were 15, 20. I see still 30 participants. I was told there are more than 100 participants registered. Anyway, I'll go further, no worry, because it is recorded as well. I have seen the organizers are recording. Please let me know, co-host, host, you can stop me if there are anything in between, right? I was mentioning you, like, if you want to understand the transboundary animal disease, you need to understand your region. You need to understand your South Asia. And then map, you can see how it is stressed, like long stress, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, India down. You can see the borders between Bangladesh and India, between Bhutan and India, between Nepal and India, you can see that. So this is the scenario. And then you know the definition of transboundary animal diseases. So you have to understand this scenario, number one. Number two scenario is South Asian practices. I was also told there will be some participants outside Nepal. If someone has joined outside South Asia or anybody one, and so for them, these South Asian practices are very, very complex, very unique. And this type of livestock trade in this region is historical. It is not. It doesn't start it in 2 years' time or in 100 years' time. It was there. Migration of animals was there before these boundaries were established. Between these boundaries, between these Bangladesh and India, and the practices of animals carrying the animal each other because of their social values, because of their relationship, and that migration was there. But at the same time, these traders, these owners, they never realize what are the regulations they need to follow. They never realize it will threat their animals. They never realize there will be outbreak of any transboundary animal diseases. So that is the reality in South Asia. The another part is, if you want to control the transboundary animal disease, you need to have a cross-border cooperation. It can be bilateral, it can be multilateral cooperation and mechanism. And to be, very openly to say that our cross-border relationships or the dialogues are not as good as, not strong as good as some of the, like, there is a very strong technical dialogue between Vietnam and China, Vietnam and Thailand. So these type of dialogue, what they do, whether it is bilateral or multilateral, they share their biotechnology information system, what the country is doing, what the other country is doing, what is the biosafety measures they are applying, what are their veterinary measures, SOPs or guidelines, and what the other country have that. So you need to harmonize with these adjoining countries, your SOPs, practices, strategies. And then based on those, unique South Asia, practices, FAO and OIE has with the member country consensus. And this one of the example I'm giving, the last bullet is FMD for virus pool 2. What do you mean that? The FMD virus in pool 2 is very, very similar. In terms of virus, you can see the viruses, you can see the circles in the right-hand picture. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7 viruses. They have a different pool. They are categorized in different pool. The virus which are our concern, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, the pool here, they have a similar genotype, similar lineage. So, even, and these lineages, if you cannot control because of these porous viruses, virus started moving to other directions. And then if someone will find this pool 2 virus in pool 4, or let's say like, pool 3 here. So that's why European Union is very much concerned about these adjoining virus pools. So that because their animals are free from FMD, but our region is endemic. So the virus might move from one region to another region, like African swine fever moved from Africa to now to Asia. another important part is South Asia. Why? It is a globally recognized hotspot for any type of pathogens, emerging infectious pathogen. For example, if you see in the right, there are 4 corners. If you see in this corner, zoonotic pathogen from wildlife, and you can see, the green represents the lowest risk level and the red represents the highest risk. Now you can see the red, first of all, locate the South Asia. Here is the South Asia, here is South Asia, here is South Asia, here is South Asia. And then South Asia is very much, Nepal is one of the member of South Asia. So whether you talk about the wildlife, non-wildlife, vector-borne pathogen or drug pathogen, South Asia is facing all EIDs, AMR, and you need to have a holistic approach. You need to have a multi-sectoral coordination and bilateral, multilateral relationship coordination. Then only you will be able to contain these type of emerging infectious diseases, and which includes transboundary animal disease. For students like you, when you started joining the departments or other private sectors, then you might think why it is important to my country, or why the cross-border, these livestock value chains are important. So until and unless we don't understand the demand, because of the demand, high demand, people started doing illegal movement of animals. And because of this porous border, and then this is happening. And how many of you know there is a lack of policy of restricted livestock trade through the land custom stations? I'll give you one example. For example, India, Nepal has a quarantines on the border side, on the south border, whereas India does not have the quarantine stations. So if one country is having quarantine, another country is not having quarantine, India considers all international airports, 6 airports for mostly, I guess, Delhi, Chennai, Mumbai, Madras, Bangalore, and Hyderabad, I guess. These are the only quarantine station they have, animal quarantine stations. So that's why you have porous border, and the people, when the animals are moving and they just ignore it officially, that's why it is going to be illegal or informal trade. When you have informal trade, you don't have a strategy, you don't regulate it. And then unfortunately, what happens, then you don't have any information or data on that. How many traders you have, how many animals are moving, what type of animals are moving, you don't know that. So this is the practical difficulty we have in this region. And these are some of the informal poultry trade moving across India and Nepal. You can see this, how the people are moving. You need money, and then the per kilo chicken in India is very cheap compared to Nepal side. So naturally the border side people will move other side and bring the chicken. It is because of the demand, because of the price. So these are some of the issue we have. And then because of this, 2009 avian influenza bird flu outbreak occurred in Japa first time in 2009. That's why one of the major part for veterinarians is to understand the value chain. You need to understand the value chain, whether you are learning epidemiology or you are doing transboundary animal disease or emerging diseases or zoonotic disease. These are some of the components you need to understand about your locality or your district or wherever you work. For example, your production system, production clusters, and then your markets, how the animals are sold, and the trade routes, how the animals are moving from one place to other place, and the collection points on holding pens. And then, for example, in case of FMD, you have a milk collection centers. And then you also need to know border points and quarantine stations. And then where there is no quarantine, what is the system of trade, and then consumption sector. These are very, very important points you need to understand, and based on these understanding, and the country developed the surveillance for transboundary animal disease. If you understand the production system of cattle and buffalo, then only you will be able to develop very good plan for FMD. If you know the production cluster, market, trade of the poultry sector, then only you can deal with some of the poultry diseases which are transboundary animal diseases. I'll give you some of the example how the animals are moved between Nepal, India, like, and then these are how we do that. So you have some of the stakeholder, I said, like, market people, you have a trade people. If you sit together, they know how the buffalo are moving to Kathmandu from 24 districts every month. So how this is time, this keep on changing, but at the time of development in Japa, and then we sit together with all the people, and then we had a meeting, and then the people started knowing what are their routes, what are their illegal routes. They are not formal routes sometimes people, and then I'll come to the other slide. And then you have a very, can you demarcate Nepal border here, up Nepal border, and this is major routes in India, very close from Uttar Pradesh to Bihar to West Bengal. These are major livestock routes in India. So this makes your life very complicated. Then there is a principle from value chain, like the more the movement and more the risk of transboundary animal diseases. And you have seen in poultry, you have seen in recently there is a Newcastle disease, and then in an outbreak of avian influenza. This is because of the movement of the animal, which is legal, illegal, because legally government will not allow during the outbreaks, but illegally or informal routes will be always there. And there are some other connecting points, like you can see these connecting points, and you can see these connecting point intensity. How many times they have moved? This is based on some analysis, and these type of maps are developed, and based on these map develops, and then when you see the intensity, consider these connecting points, and with higher intensity, for example, this is a higher intensity, and your surveillance program for cattle, buffalo, for FMD will be more focused on here. But if you focus here, there is only one point. So you are just throwing your resources, and you are not considering the risk. So these are some of the valid point to develop your transboundary animal disease surveillance plans. Now, it might be very interesting to you. In a recent past, the COVID-19 outbreak has occurred in India and in Nepal, and you know why cross-border, bilateral, and multilateral relationships are important. This was the publication in New Nepal Times, and then he said, as India peaks COVID-19, it spreads rapidly in Nepal. See, and then you can see Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, there are big outbreaks, and then Nepal cannot remain, without outbreaks. But the message from these two figures to map is, number one, Nepal will always be at the risk because of the porous open border, not only to COVID, to other transboundary animal diseases. And this is the same sentence I just copied from Nepal Times. Because of the open border, Nepal may not be able to completely control the virus until India does. This, if this, the media man must have no knowledge about the value chain, he should not have written this until India does. That means Nepal should wait, not prepare until India have outbreaks. So that is not the correct version. What we should understand is this should be in a bilateral relationship. If you have a bilateral relationship after the outbreak, And then both the country agrees to keep some of the border post here, and the disease can be controlled better than what it has happened in the past. So these are some of the examples. You need to have some bilateral relationship. I mentioned already, transboundary animal disease is a very high potential, and then you will agree with me. I think more the income you have, and then more the people start eating more protein, and diets are shifting from cereal to the protein. This is a evidence-based, the justification from different publications. What happens, like, when you have a more demand and then more movement, and then that makes your life difficult. That is risk. Value chain are not built for veterinarians. It's all economy. It's all because of money. When you have a demand, then people started doing whatever they like it. When you don't have regulations, and then when you don't have a regulation, you have a rampant movement, then you have a risk. What happens because of this risk? And then it is always possible any disease in India will come to Nepal, any disease in Nepal will go to India. So it's not a one-way traffic. And many times we say, because the disease is in India, that's why we got the disease. It might be vice versa. So that's why we have always threat of having a new transboundary animal disease in the future. And this is the recent example of African swine fever. If you have no knowledge of African swine fever, it was never in Asia until 2018. First time in Asia, it came from Russia to China, and slowly it started coming to the South Asian countries that are Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, and slowly it came to eastern part of India, Mizoram, Assam. Then it came to Bhutan, and Nepal has not reported yet. So when you have such type of mortality, and there is a lot of the impact can be very much similar, like animal will not provide the milk, it's a visible loss, and you have invisible loss, infertility, like other things, and even your treatment, vaccine incur some of the cost. And as I said, you might have heard, like there are a lot of trade from Australia to Middle East. One shipment for the meat purpose, and then when they were tested in the borders, they were not allowed to the country. So that is a trade barrier. So these are some of the impact transboundary animal disease will cause to the nations. In summary, transboundary animal disease, as a student, I would always suggest try to understand, detect, and contain the disease. Try to learn clinically what are the disease in your region and how you learn clinically to suspect them. When you learn them clinically and then you detect it, and then sometime you are nowhere, you don't have any knowledge, then you call upon some specialist and experts opinion when you have uncertainty. And there are some of the simulation exercises. This is nothing but you do some exercises when you don't have a disease. We did simulation exercises for bird flu when there was no bird flu in Nepal. And then people, and if human health people in Nepal would have done the simulation exercises for emerging infectious disease like COVID, it would have become very, very easier. If Nepal would have done the simulation exercise for 2015 earthquake, less loss could have occurred. So these are some of the simulation exercises you practice for the emergencies. During the practices, these simulation exercises or whatever it happens, please involve all the veterinary system whenever it comes to the production, whenever it comes to the marketing. You cannot say, I am just practicing. You don't know about the production. We are practicing, you don't know about the market chain. That's why disease flares from one place to another place. And some of the examples are faculty those who are in teaching faculty, they should be involved in this cycle. And those people, those practitioners who are coming to the rural or urban practitioner, whether they are in the government practitioner or private practitioners, they should also involve. And there are other authorities who regulate the policies and strategies. So this is all about transboundary animal diseases. And then I'm just pushing to another slide, which is about the global framework for progressive control of transboundary animal disease. It is called GFTADS. This is established by, before that, is to achieve proper prevention and control of transboundary animal disease. If this is the global platform, and then you have a main purpose, and every country would follow that. And it was initiated in 2004, and then it was a joint initiative of FAO and OIE. But when it comes to the zoonotic tests, there is a participation from WHO. And then there are, it addresses in different regions. There are 6 regions. I'll not go to other region other than Asia. And then there are sub-region, region, global dimension of TADS. And then it addresses, for example, Asia Pacific platform. And under Asia Pacific, there is separate ASEAN, there is separate SAARC. I told you, like, there is a CBO networks, there is a laboratory networks of 8 countries, there is a epidemiology network of the 8 countries. They started developing their SOPs, harmonized SOPs, harmonized strategies together. So that is the one way of guiding the countries how transboundary animal disease can be controlled. So other than this transboundary animal disease GFTAD platform, there is another platform which is called Global Health Security Agenda. I don't know how many of you have heard about Global Health Security Agenda. This is called GHSA. GHSA is mainly enhances the country capacity. Again, the principle is to prevent, to detect, and to respond the infectious disease. So, so these are the some of the global platform, and they prepare some guidelines, and then country they support, and based on these platforms, the below. Wait, something came. Just excuse me. These 2 platforms, for example, for zoonotic diseases, mostly in these country like Nepal and Bangladesh, this program is continuing, and this program will support the regional, sub-region, and country level, and the principle is to capacity building of the countries. So this is the main area, and I'll give you just one example. If you are like assigned to the Department of Livestock Services in the government sector, so you are contributing, developing this control and prevention of transboundary animal disease at large, like it's not just you cannot think, you should come out of the box. You should think about the cross border, you should think about the South Asia, you should think about the region. So the main purpose is you first of all improve the animal health situation in the country, and then once your animal health improvement is there, then only you can think of this harmonization, coordination, and then some of the countries are thinking about the export and import. So, and if you don't develop together this type of framework, it doesn't work. So to develop this type of framework at regional level, national people are required. Subnational means SAARC, ASEAN, I mentioned in earlier slide, and the regional people are required. Whatever apart from this national, subnational, and regional platform, there are other partners. Usually they are called partners, FAO and OIE. they support these regional partners. MES means member states. Member states means countries. So for example, there is a regional framework for FMD in SAARC region. So then all the 8 countries are the national, SAARC is subnational, for example, and then that will be supported by FAO and OI. So this is just some of the example. When you sit together, you develop the framework, and then member states are means the one who is a veterinarian working under the department or ministry. So they are the one who are really working, and maybe in the future you are in this position, these member states, these national. So and wherever other parties not much for you, and then I already mentioned harmonization regulations are important, and then collaboration is important. So this is just one example. Based on that, and then we started developing the FMD control program in Nepal. So Nepal will say we have a regional framework. Our basic guideline is regional framework, so we have to develop our national framework. So these are some of the principles to develop any guideline for transboundary animal disease. You cannot sit in a room and develop your own framework. So that's the main objective of showing this complicated graph here. How many of you understand about the progressive control pathway? I don't know how you use these icons. If you understand about this platform, for example, hand raise, or you don't like, or I'm too fast. So these are the here, and but because please stop me, and maybe you can you can stop whenever you like it. So I'm just giving you one few seconds here. This is a progressive control pathway. It is called PCP. The meaning, English meaning, is a progressive. What it could be? Progressive control path is a stepwise control, and a stepwise approach. See the three terms: reduction, elimination, eradication. If you don't, usually country tend to forget, they put it control program. Control program means what is your objective? What is your objective? Objective is eradication, or is it elimination, or reduction? So that's why FAO and OIE developed this PCP tool. This PCP tool was developed first time for foot and mouth disease. I'll just explain that tool. These are some of the examples, and based on this tool, which is working very well for foot and mouth disease, and these tools then applied to PPR, then applied to rabies, and in Africa, African animal trypanosomiasis. And these tools are very much risk and evidence-based tools. They guide to the endemic countries where there is a disease. And these tools are progressively improve the management of risk and reduce the risk, disease impact, and viral circulation slowly. So this is the tool which will allow you to develop your country program. And then this is always a systematic approach for planning and evaluating whether you are going in the right direction or you are not going in the right direction. It has a provision of evaluating your interventions also. And then it is a realistic disease tool. So this is tool. One example on the left side, you can see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 OI. So there are steps, there are stairs. So these tools are, this is very much approved by OI FAO tool, and I'll just explain giving the example of FMD. And there is another tool, PCP, FMD, PCP, PPR. So the below one is PPR. For example, PPR also stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5, 4 and 4. So I'll not go into detail, but it is not an overnight business. It might take years if you are really serious in the country. So that is the one of the example. I'm going to next slide. So PCP FMD stages. So again, the same graph, and then these are some of the stages. And then, for example, if you are in the stage 1, the country will say, I don't have FMD control program. I don't have any epidemiology data. The field, and we don't have any data. How many outbreaks happen in Chitwan districts? Nobody knows. How many outbreaks happen in Chitwan district in last 3 months? That is reliable data. So you don't have anything in the country. So you are in a stage 1. So then you start developing your risk assessment plan. And once you have a risk assessment plan, then stage 1, slowly you try to find the risk. Where are the risks? And then you try to develop your control options are identified. In a Chitwan district, mainly, for example, and Bharatpur municipality is the main highest hotspot. So you start finding the risk. Where is the risk? I'm just giving some of the example. Once you start developing the risk, then it might take from stage 1. Nepal was in stage, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, they were stage 0 at one stage, 9 years. Nepal still is in stage 1. Bhutan has jumped to the stage 2. India is in stage 3. So it all depends how fast you develop your strategy, how fast you work on your work, like, you know. So this is the work, like, you know, if you are joining to the department tomorrow, and then one of the first objective you assign to a district, you should know your district risk assessment. So you have to have your risk assessment plan. So once you are stage 2, then you know a lot of things, and you may remain in stage 2 for 2 to 3 years to 4 years. It depends on your resources. So then stage 3, then stage 4, then start, you know, it all depends upon. So then only you say, you go to OIE and write to them, we are free from FMD, please endorse us. And then OIE will look after your freedom, you look after your stage 1 to 4 activities, how you have done that. So if OIE agrees on science-based evidence, so they will provide you the evidence. Similarly, the countries without vaccination and countries, you know, these are some of the example of doing what you call controlling the transboundary animal disease. No disease can be controlled without these tools. Please, vaccination is only one tool which you have seen in a detection, in a prevention. So don't consider only vaccination is your prevention and control measures. So these are some of the overall cycle of the, you know, disease management aspect. You need to understand it. So, and this once you cross the stage 4, and it is called official status, it can only provided by OIE. Whereas stage 1 to 4, it is your country status. You said, I don't want to control my disease and I want to be in stage 1, and then your neighbor will push you, because India will push you, because India wanted to trade with other countries on the buff meat, for example. So these are some of the, you know, long-term planning, long-term thinking. Don't think only just disease treatment. And then this is another example of rabies. When you have no data, 0, you start assessment, then you call it stage 1, strategic planning stage 2, control starts stage 3, elimination stage 4, and then maintenance of your elimination stage 5. So when you say you are at 0 stage, your country, Nepal, is endemic for dog transmitted rabies. When you are in stage 5, you say Nepal is free from dog transmitted rabies. So this is fixed template menu. So you have to have this type of plan when you want to control any transboundary animal disease. I think whether you have heard about the rinderpest, which was already eradicated since 2011. But you see the panic, how the disease are eradicated. In 2001, many countries didn't have the virus. That was the last outbreak of rinderpest. Still, they are using progressive control pathway for rinderpest, for global eradication, for global freedom. So it took globally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years to eliminate the virus. So at the end of 2006, it is stopped vaccinating, and the people started, they call it a provisional freedom. And another 3 years, then you do your surveillance. That means you use your value chain study, and then you targeted, means based on your value chain, you go to your more intensified movement critical control points, and you keep on, you are collecting your samples, watching your animals, and then you don't see any viruses in such places, at least for next 3 years. Then that is end of field operation, and then it becomes the eradication. Finally, rinderpest disease was one of the transboundary animal disease, only one animal disease which is globally eradicated. No country have this rinderpest viruses, and then FAO and OI are encouraging to the countries not to keep these live viruses. There are, if at all, if re-emerge in Nepal, for example, in Asia, there is only one lab which can diagnose, is in Japan now. So this is still because the people still think any disease can re-emerge it. So even after 2000, it's already 10 years, so it can re-emerge it. So that's one way of understanding the re-emerging. So again, these are some of the pathway you follow always. I'm very nearing to end of my presentation, and I will give you this. I focus a little bit on this. I think I was given 1 hour time. I'm within time, I guess. This is take-home message, please. As a day one competent veterinarian graduate, guys, first of all, consider disseminate or spread this news to other trainers or training future practitioners, first of all. So, and what will be the role of educator? Very important to understand these few bullets. Number one, please develop your skills. In skills in the sense, for example, you need to understand outbreak investigation. If you want to go to the field, if there is a FMD outbreak, if there is a PPR outbreak, you understand how I need to go. Or skill of surveillance. So you want to develop a surveillance of FMD, you need to skill up yourself. So this is the important part. The other important part is open-mindedness, please, in developing the differential diagnosis list. I have seen many veterinarians bluntly, very quickly, they say, once they open the carcass of a bird, they say, oh, it's a Newcastle disease. No, it's IBD. No, this is this. And they don't see openly. Like, for example, many diseases, avian influenza and Newcastle cannot be differentiated based on clinical signs. So please, and then you can add 2 more diseases. Why not this disease? Why not this disease? So open your mindness and don't be too stingy. Just don't make a decision on abrupt basis. Other way is whether you want to be epidemiologist or you want to be laboratory expert, you know what right sample. Right sample, correct sample is very much important, whether it is a transboundary disease or other diseases. And then I have already mentioned risk analysis. Risk analysis is based on what even I mentioned, like you plan your risk assessment plan, something like that. So risk analysis is like, for example, there is already virus in Chitwan. Nawalprasi district and Makwanpur district start doing some risk analysis, their assessments around it. So something like that, you at least you start knowing about those knowledge, how the risk analysis is done, normal basic knowledge, and then as you grow up, then there is an advanced risk analysis systems. So this bullet number 5 is knowledge not limited to Rampur, not limited to Chittagong, not limited to Nepal. Try to be globally, try to understand the global features, South Asia features. So your knowledge is not limited to particular disease, because our education system, I studied in India and long back, but still education system at this time, you must be knowing better than me, but still, is a classroom teaching, then you have just mugging on the disease, what are the sign and symptom, what is the antibiotic treatment, so not beyond that. So why the particular disease is not connected with the value chain, why it is not disease connected to the cross borders, such types are not in our course books. So that's why your knowledge is always important to enhance beyond your premises. That is the one saying. The another part is, don't forget about it, don't hesitate it, which is very much common in South Asia practices. Again, we don't speak in a classroom, we don't ask the questions, we don't, and I am the boss, I know whatever I know it, whether it starts from but please contact when you don't know anything, you have uncertainty. Don't do single man decisions, don't do without science-based decisions. And in epidemiology, we call it evidence-based decisions. In Nepal, sometimes politicians decide for health crucial issues, which is not science-based, for example, so that's why when you are in college, you start developing your uncertainty things, and then thinking out of box. These are some of the key take-home messages, which you will like it. I'm sure new graduates should be well equipped to play a key role in global societies, not in a local societies. So thank you very much. This is my end of my presentation. I hand over to our organizers. I stop sharing screen.
Thank you, sir, for the valuable information. We have some questions for you, sir. The first question is from Ms. Kumar Shah. Are the aspects in case of notifiable disease and the animal health emergency similar, or let's say, can we assume aspects of notifiable disease comes under animal health emergency?
Okay. There are two things. Notifiable disease is when your cabinet, for example, in Nepal have got 24 notifiable disease. It can be transboundary animal disease, it cannot be transboundary animal disease, whatever the disease is. Notifiable means you are student of Rampur campus, you are citizen of Nepal, you are supposed to report to as a that it's called in a Pasu Swasthya Ain and Nimavali Kati 55 or something like that. It really clearly mentioned, and every citizen had to report it. Every farmer has to report it, and then every veterinary officer has to report to the concerned department. So that is a reporting mandatory system. Whereas animal health emergencies is a tool. It's a tool. Is a tool you apply when you want to control the disease, or you want to prepare yourself. So these are the two things. Under animal health emergencies, notifiable is one of the mandatory part. So you have to report. So, but when you are preparing emergency, you prepare emergency in peace time. So, for example, you don't have disease, ASF, now prepare it. And then these are two different aspects. Yeah, go ahead, plus. I hope I clear him.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Ms. Anamika Shrestha. How wildlife trade is responsible for COVID-19?
It's a very interesting question. I had I purposely removed some of my wildlife part, and then when it comes to you try to please try to not to forget wildlife ecology, forest ecology, deforestation, and wildlife trade are very much related to infectious diseases. There are evidences, and then WHO has a very high level experts which visited China with the Chinese government, and they have not revealed, they have not said it's because of this and because of that, but based on our experiences, based on our evidences, what scientists have generated from 2002 SARS and MERS viruses, and these bats are very much the risk animals. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Somnath Arya. What should be the role of field veterinarians in case of diagnosis of notifiable disease? That is, cats, how and whom should they report?
This is a very good question when you are in where you are in student life. Number one, I think based on your this type of webinars, you try to understand what are notifiable diseases. Notifiable disease is the veterinary officer is supposed to report to Department of Livestock Services focal person. So that is the most important role of reporting. And under your district, and you have many stakeholders. For example, there are different stakeholders. For example, a lot of people are paravets, even animal health workers, even industry, even school, colleges, like industry, and there are many people who are doing this. I already showed the last slide. From production to market chain, veterinarian, please involve with this. So if you are not involved, if you are just say you are field veterinarian, you don't want to understand the scenario around you. The role would be to understand your scenario around you. That is value chain on livestock, poultry, other part. That is different part. The reporting system I already mentioned. It's a focal person to the Department of Livestock Services. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next question is from Mr. Umesh again. Last year, there was an outbreak of LSD in cattle reported from Moran district and later in other part of country as well. Was it spread from neighboring country? How could it be possible since the country was in lockdown state?
Good. And a lot of people started saying because I'll focus on your question first, and then maybe that's why cross-border transboundary animal diseases are important. There are 2 points I mentioned. Number one, there was a lockdown, but you never know whether LSD reported in Morang was the first case or disease was already there. And there are some vectors, and the vector might have carried the disease, or there was a history, even far western part of Nepal was having similar symptoms to 1 year before, or we were not able to diagnose it. There are a lot of questions behind it. So it's not a very hard and fast, like, in Morang, they detected it, and detection case was usually our laboratory systems are very late, or our, the field investigation systems are late, like, so it might have emerged by other way, means not only you don't need animals to move. It's a vector can move, vector can move very easily. So these are some of the example I could say.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Mr. Somnath Arel. Does SAR strategy also fall under PCP principles?
Yeah.
Strategy.
First of all, that's why some of the known terminology, when we said, I told you, like, we don't say ECTAD, ECTAD, we call it SARI. So SARI strategy is yes, it is under PCP strategy. You can see easily 0 is no data, 1 is assessment. So it is based on the PCP strategy, yes. And then usually, like, PCP progressive control pathway, it's all strategy. Any disease, for example, even for LSD, if the country doesn't prepare the PCP, it will not be controlled. It will be controlled in a certain region, or it will re-emerge again. So it is always in principle of PCP, because when you have a regional conference and more than one country assembled together, every country agree, that's a strategy. So based on that strategy, and every country, put their evaluation on that. And rabies is certainly, yes, it is on the PCP principles.
Next question is from Umesh. Can you please elaborate the process of maintenance? Point 5 in PCP in case of rinderpest that has been eradicated globally.
Can you please elaborate the process of maintenance? Point 5 in PCP. Shall I show again? Wait, just let me just see that.
You can just elaborate, sir.
Okay. It's a, maintenance is, if some country are saying we don't have virus, and then you cannot say just blindly. I'll give you a very good example. When Nepal started developing FMD control program in eastern Nepal, and then Department of Livestock Service and a lot of colleagues started saying Elam does not have disease for last 5 years. And then these experts from FAO, they said, maintain it first of all and prove it. You don't have disease. So these are some of the examples that you can easily understand. Like, that's why you need few years to maintain you are free from the viruses. So you need to check animals sample. You need to do the surveillance and then check whether virus is as a carrier in the population. So, but that is not one time. So you need many years. So that's why you need to maintain. Once it is maintained, means let's say, like, you want to start in 2021, and by 24 you will justify to OIE that these are our tests, these are our samples, we have maintained that there was no viruses. So something like that. So this is the process. Every country has to do that. There are certain processes. It's in guideline. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sir. Next question is from Vinay Thapa. Here it writes, please put some words on simulation exercise practices for TADS, example FMD. Usually simulation exercises are practiced when you have never seen the disease.
a group of Australians used to come Nepal from 2012 until 2019, until this before COVID. People used to come at least in one batch, minimum 15 to 20 people, veterinarians, industry people. They wanted to understand the FMD and they wanted to know how to control it if the Australia has developed. So like Nepal, if you are facing everyday outbreaks, you don't need the simulation exercise. But certainly simulation exercise is a process. For example, outbreak investigation is a process. I will relate if it is in Nepal. Let's do COVID like another pandemic simulation in Nepal, which is initially the virus was in animals. Let's say in dog, this COVID is COVID already found in dog, and then it jumped to human, and again it came with the new strain. So then you can have a multi-sectoral collaboration for the simulation exercises. When the virus is in animals, how you act in. When the virus is in humans, how you work on that. We did for the bird flu outbreak simulation exercise, which was very much within the room. If it is within the room, we call it tabletop exercise. You just make the imagination. And but for bird flu, when there was no outbreak in Nepal, we used to do simulation exercises. Minimum of 100 people together. Out of 100 people, you have an operation team leader, and everything. You have the people who are killing the birds, people who are doing the outbreak investigation, and we used to send the simulated sample to CBL Kathmandu. That means, assuming that the flight is on time, sample is received on time, people went to airport, collected the sample. So these type of practices happens. So I'll give you another example. There is a flood in Sindhupalchok, and then you would have known 5 months before, if you would have done the simulation exercises, how many items you have in the ground, how many the tent you have in the field. These are the simulation exercises, are pre-preparation exercises. I think I explained him, maybe he understood very clearly. Vinayji?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. These were the questions in the chat box. And if anyone has other questions, you can unmute yourself and ask. Okay. I think we don't have any other questions. So thank you, sir, for this informative session.
Thank you. Thank you, all the participants. Thank you for listening to me.
Okay, we gained a lot